Saturday at 12 o'clock.
In a more useful way. So, anyway, so I think.
So at this point, as a researcher, do you feel pressure from the Trump administration?
Oh boy, do I feel pressure? I think all of scientists right now in America are trying to figure out what is going on.
What is it going on?
I think we don't know. That's the problem. And I think people are genuinely worried. I mean, the definition of fear is fear comes along when you don't know what's going to happen, when you have no control over something and you don't know what's coming next. And I think that's where many scientists are at in America, where we don't know what's going to come next. And when you don't know the future, you can start to develop concerns about what's going to happen with us.
Is it more of a psychological fear at this point, or does something really happen? Is it something really happening now?
There's a reality of the fact that, for example, funding has been effectively put on hold while they determine what they're going to go forward. So when you see things like that happening, that's a reality. And so there's a lot of different people trying to understand what does that mean. I think if probably in 6 months, we'll have a much better idea of where things actually are going and whether we need to be fearful or not. But the one thing I do know is, in the US, they will continue. There's so many good people. There's so many good scientists. There's so many people who care about how well this system works for the benefit of everyone. Take wrong turns along the way, it will get resolved and it will get fixed. But right now, it's really impossible to know.
Do you think it was a big problem, or it is still a big problem now in research fields, that people who get more access to capital and assets and stuff like that, resources, they're the ones that are more likely to come up with bigger achievements?
Yes. I mean, we have a stratified system by how we do research, right? I mean, we have a stratified system which is around the idea of who gets the education.
Right.
And once you have an education, who then gets access to go work in the best labs. And once you're in the best labs, the things that you're working on are often very expensive. So which labs are getting the most resources to be able to go and do research? I mean, if you think about things like everything from implementation of AI to thinking about, I'll give you a great example is medicines. For any new medicine to be developed, it typically requires literally at least $1 billion worth of investment to be able to develop one new medicine.
Right.
So that is a scenario where the average person can't invent a new medicine. I mean, they even if they did invent one, they couldn't. There's no way you could bring it forward. What is exciting, you're seeing more and more countries develop more and more great research labs. I'll give you an example. Obviously, China. In China, the organic chemistry development has really expanded enormously. And so some of the best research in the world in organic chemistry is happening now in China, where maybe 20 years ago there was some, but not to the same level.
Right.
So this is actually, that part is very, very important with respect to gaining for the world, is you need more and more and more research to take place, which everyone I think appreciates and understands that the more you have going on around the world, the more likely success will happen.
You mentioned AI. How do you think AI comes into play? Do you use AI for your research?
We use a small amount of AI. I think it's increasing. AI is very, very useful, obviously, for pattern recognition, right? So if we need to optimize a chemical reaction, AI is very valuable. So imagine we discover a new chemical reaction. We think it's important, but maybe it would take us 6 months or 9 months to make it so useful that everyone can use it. Right. Now, if you can shrink that 6 or 9 months to 1 week or 10 days, that's very, very beneficial. That's great. So AI is very useful in that context. Where AI has a little bit of an issue is one of the things that we do is we invent new chemical reactions, which is a kind of, people think, well, that's interesting. So you actually sit down and in your mind come up with ideas of what chemical reactions the world needs. And the issue there is AI, it's up to this stage has not been able to do that because AI needs patterns to be able to recognize, to implement them in new ways. But if those reactions have never been invented before, they don't exist to train the AI system to think that way. So for invention, it's there. Up to this stage, it's not been useful. But I can completely imagine in the future, one of the things I would love to use AI for is to think about all the resources that exist on our planet and then think about what are the ways in which we can start to combine those molecules to actually come up with new types of molecules that are going to be very useful to everyone that we're not thinking about right now. So in that case, AI would be coming up with a hypothesis, but it wouldn't be coming up with a solution. And I think it should be able to do that. I've talked to a number of computer scientists about this. They believe that this is doable. It's not something that AI is used for right now, but they think it absolutely is doable. So I think that's going to be a really exciting potential area. I'll give you an example. So airplane fuel, aviation fuel is kerosene. Kerosene's pretty expensive, but there's other molecules like methane, ethane, hexane. And if an AI system said, look, if you could take 2 molecules of hexane, which is broadly available, and simply figure out a way of connecting them, you would be able to make aviation fuel much, much cheaper. But we don't know how to do that. But what AI would be doing is it's telling us, but if you could do that, it'd be great. And that will make chemists sit down like the mathematician and in their brain try and come up with ways of thinking about ways that you could invent a reaction to make that happen. So in doing so, AI would be creating the hypothesis based upon the availability of molecules on the planet, and it would be doing it in a much, much faster way than the way that humans or scientists do it right now. So it'd be creating questions for us to think about that we're just not thinking about right now.
Do you have any plans to work with computer scientists on that?
We already work with computer scientists on many different things. So we work on things like that. We're already talking to them about hypothesis generation. We also work a lot in cancer. We work in the cancer field of being able to use computer learnings or effectively machine learning to try and understand what potential molecules or targets there are in human living systems that might be implicated in cancer treatments that people are not thinking about right now. And what we're doing is we're inventing molecules that we think might be useful to interact with those targets in the body to effectively treat cancer parts. So yeah, so those are combinations of molecular biologists, chemists, and computer scientists all coming together to think about these problems.